as mentioned, with me via telephone, we are very lucky and fortunate to have a rising star in the world of Jewish music. Though he is not a singer, he has performed at thousands of simchas over the last 10 and 15 years. He's produced some of the most major concerts and programming over the last few years, and he just released his debut album starring an all-star slew of singers. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the one and only Chony Milecki.
Okay, welcome. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I've always been looking forward to this call. The Yossi Z show, the Z Report.
Well,
Thank you so much.
I appreciate it. Welcome to the show, Chony. I got to tell you, being that I'm in the music world, I watch your Facebook feeds, your Instagram. I see all the gigs you're doing, but it wasn't until you did this Kivakora single, what was it, about 2 years ago with Mendy Drufi and David Crombie that you first popped onto my feed as, more than just a one-man band. And then upon more research, I see you've produced some amazing shows. I mean, we're talking about huge events, like 5 times the size of a Haas concert.
Yeah, we've done some pretty big shows, Baruch Hashem. And I've been a little bit under the radar, and I figured that's why it's time to come out with an album, to really try to showcase what it is that I'm all about the music, about my message, and that was what came through with the Great Farby. That's the name of my album, and I'm so proud to have it out.
Yeah, I got to tell you, the name, the Great Farby. It took me a few to figure out what you meant. I don't know if it's me not being Lubavitch, but I was like Farby, what's Farby? And a day later, I was like, oh, Farbrengen. It's like a short version. It's like a slang version of Farbrengen. Who uses that language though? Is that like a famous word in Lubavitch?
No, it isn't. I'm from Australia.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I was born in Sydney. My parents are shluchim there, so I was brought up in a Chabad family on shluchas. And Australia, we have our own slang. And one of the things we call is a barbecue. We call it a barbie.
Right, so that I'm familiar with, but this I'm not.
Then it was just a short throw for Farbrengen to become a Farby. So whenever you want to have a Farbrengen, and it's a little bit more chilled. So it's, let's say, you might have beer on the table. So we call it a Farby. And I figured that's the name of the album because I'm not a Rosh Hashiva. I'm not a mashpia, a gadol hador.
Right.
But I do have a message. It's maybe a little bit more contemporary. So I figured, let me call it the Great Farby. It talks to my Chabad roots. It talks to my Australian roots. It talks to my message. It was just, I figured, the perfect name.
Yeah, it definitely is all-encompassing. I thought it was like a gimmicky name, and I loved it, And then you released the graphic, and I'm assuming Sterling Meyer did it. I love the font. I love the way the E and the Great and the Farby was on the audio levels. You see it going up and down. So I hopped a lot of hano out of it. I didn't know it was more than a gimmick. So I guess you're teaching me something here today.
Yeah, no, it wasn't a gimmick, although, I guess it comes across as a gimmick, but definitely a lot of thought went into that name. And the funny thing is, I probably ought to spend a lot of time trying to figure out what the name is. This came to me immediately, right at the beginning of the process of starting the album. And although I came across hundreds of names since then, this one is the one that stuck. It was straight away.
Well, I think it's a great name. The cover looks very attractive. You have a slew of major name singers. I was shocked. I immediately called Yoni Z to get more information about you and the album. And upon asking Yoni and a few of my friends in the Crown Heights, they're like, Chony is the best one-man band production guy in Lubavitch. For sure in the tri-state area, but in Lubavitch. I was like, what? They were like, yeah, Chony's for sure the best guy. So I get the album. I'm listening to it, Chony. I'm enjoying it. But it is a Farbrengen. It's all pretty much Lubavitch-themed songs, which is fine.
Right. Well, they're not all Chabad songs in particular, but it's the kind of songs you would hear at a Farbrengen.
Mm-hmm.
There's quite a few songs that are not Chabad at all, but they're the songs that I remember growing up with that I would, let's say, start if I was at a Farbrengen. I really tried to come up with songs for this album that bring the listener closer to Hashem. I wasn't looking for contemporary songs. I was looking to do contemporary music.
Mm-hmm.
But I felt that the songs themselves should be the real deal, authentic Hasidic music. And putting that to authentic modern style. And I think that's really what Jewish music is all about. You know, I've been discussing with some of the singers. I did an interview as part of my promotion, which I haven't put out yet, but I did interviews with Benny Friedman, with Barry Weber, with Yankee Lemmer, and I have a few other artists I'm going to be interviewing.
Okay.
And one of the subjects that keeps coming up is, what is Jewish music? And of course, it's a subject that everybody has an opinion on and that everybody has spoken about a million times. And my opinion of Jewish music is that it is music that was created and has the effect of bringing people closer to Hashem. And that's really what I went for with this album. Once upon a time, there was no such thing as drums in Jewish music. There was no such thing as a bass or a guitar in Jewish music. And now in authentic Hasidic music, you wouldn't even go to a Rebbe's daughter's wedding and not hear those instruments. So the Jewish music isn't about the instrumentation. It's not about even the style, because honestly, the Hasidic style is really based on some Eastern styles from hundreds of years ago.
Correct.
Jewish music is literally, in my opinion, music that was created and has the effect of bringing people closer to Hashem. And that's how you can have Sephardi music that is authentic Jewish music, even though it doesn't have the same sound that we're used to in Hasidic Jewish music. And that is considered Jewish music. And that's what I was going for, and I think that I achieved it. I hope I achieved it.
No, I think you did too. I just, that is such a big conversation. We can be here arguing about for hours what's considered Jewish music, but I believe you did the right thing, and I believe you definitely accomplished what you set out. The thing that I loved about your album is as follows. There are very many albums or events where I can see Eli Marcus or Barry Weber or Shmuley Unger, but not many albums have those names, as well as my favorite Israeli artist Nemuel, as well as my favorite artist from Florida, Shuki, who you haven't seen recently, and Mendy Drufi from Israel, and Pimenta, and Rogers Park from Michigan. So, to get all those names in one place for me was huge, because I'm a fan of pretty much every singer on this album, but they've never been put together quite this way ever.
That's interesting. I never even thought of that. But I was very, very lucky. I've developed friendships over the course of many years in the music business. Mm-hmm. And none of these singers charged. They were all so gracious. Everyone from Eighth Day to Pimenta to Nemuel Rosh to Shmuley Unger, you name it, Yossi Zweig, they all came into the studio graciously when I asked them to, and I was very, very lucky. So the people on the album are people I've performed with, people who are in my circle of friends. Benny Friedman, of course, is a great friend of mine. I don't know if you remember, we used to do the 90-second Bratzara together every single week.
Sure I do.
And we're Kabbalas, too. Right. We learn on a daily basis, so that was an easy one to get Benny. In fact, I told Benny, I said, you're the only guy who doesn't have a choice. You have to say yes to me. But Baruch Hashem, that's how that came together. Just a lot of friendships and a lot of good times. And then turned up in the studio.
Right. Singer, one-man band, producer extraordinaire, Chony Milecki with us via telephone. We're talking to him about the release of his brand new album, The Great Farby. Now, Chony, let me ask you, I have thousands of albums in my computer that I've been collecting over the last years, and I'm going through song selection. I see Joyful Player, Dira Bicalypso, Johnny. What's up with the song names, and where did this come from?
So, again, it's all about the Farbrengen. The names that you brought up, for example, what was the first one you just said? Joy and Prayer. So it's based on a niggin, which goes, song that everybody knows. It's not a Chabad niggin.
Right.
And I had a choice. I could write on as a name for this track. I could have said Ha'aderes V'Ha'emunah, and it would mean absolutely nothing to anybody. In fact, I doubt that anyone would have given it a second look and would have even taken the time to translate those words into English in their own mind. So I thought to myself, what is Ha'aderes V'Ha'emunah? What is this song and the musical arrangement doing for me? And the first thing I thought about is jumping to my feet during davening. And that's why I called it Joyful Prayer. That Ha'aderes V'Ha'emunah, like on Shabbos when you do that tefillah, that's just a lot of joy. The whole shul, at least the shul where I go to, just starts to sing that niggin. So that's how I came up with that. Dira Bicalypso. So that's an interesting one. In Chabad, we have this very popular concept called Dira B'Tachtonim. And what it means is that our mission as Yidden is to bring Hashem into this world, to make this world a house for Hashem, that Hashem should be comfortable to live here.
Okay.
And the style of that track, that's actually Eighth Day is singing on that track.
Right.
And the song is I'm Not Avda. It's all about how we are servants of Hashem. I have an English track there with an English solo there with Yossi Zweig singing that as well. And this style, once I finished it, I figured, it has a bit of a Latin American kind of a feel to it, very similar to the style Calypso. And I thought, wow, that's really interesting. So we're bringing Hashem into Calypso, and that's why I called it Dira Calypso.
Interesting.
Dira
Okay.
Calypso.
So I see you're a very creative guy, coming up with these names and the name of the album. Also, you're...
the funny thing is it took me about a year and a half to 2 years to come up with the music. So It took me about 2.5 minutes to come up with the names. I don't know why it was so easy, but I just sat down, I did them, and that was it.
I guess if you're doing it for the right reasons, HaKadosh Baruch Hu's helping the rest of the creative process flow through you.
Right. Yes, it's out of the box for a lot of people. I know that those names could have scared a lot of people, but I made a cheshbon. I'm doing these things for the right reason. My heart is in the right place, and really, I grew up in Shlichus, so I have this Kiru vibe going through everything that I do. It's just part of my upbringing. And I figured it's really what I'm doing is really trying to make a Dira B'Tachtonim here with the music, and hopefully people will get it. And I figured that instead of worrying about what people are going to think about the music and what people are going to think about the names, I'm going to do something that is true to the message that I'm trying to bring.
Well, let's talk about the music for a second. I mean, you're a very well-known one-man band pianist. You're not a guitarist, you're not a drummer, so we know that you play piano and keyboard. But this album is very heavy electronic music. Yes, that's it's a lot of programming on your keyboard. But is there a reason you didn't want to go the live instruments route for this particular album?
Okay, so a couple of things. First, you keep mentioning I'm a one-man band, and yes, it is a lot of what I do, but I do plenty of orchestras as well. In fact, I have a video coming out now. It's about a 10-piece band, very, very different to all of the sounds that you're used to hearing. I find, with all respect to them, because I think that so many of the bands out there are really authentically professional and great, but if you close your eyes, you wouldn't know which is which. I think everybody agrees to that. If you close your eyes and you didn't know who you're listening to, you wouldn't know if it was Freilach or it was the A-Team or if it was Evanal.
I definitely agree with that. And I was very happy that I was fortunate enough to get the album from you and from Sruli for Hanukkah, because I drove to Michigan. That's a 10-hour ride. So that album with the fast music with all my favorite singers was a great way for me to stay awake and for me to enjoy such a long trek across country.
And the interesting thing about all of the bands that are out there today, talking about the guys who are at the top, is that Jewish music today is electronic, okay? Starting from Yesh Tikva, going all the way to Rabbi Shimon, and all the way to...
Ivri Anochi, right.
Ivri Anochi. It's all electronic music, or at least very heavily
influenced
based on a foundation of electronic music. And then all of the bands are playing acoustic music that they really could have gotten away with doing exactly the same sound in 1925. Nothing has changed on the Jewish music scene, and the live Jewish music scene, in terms of we're not matching on the dance floor the music that we're producing for our albums, and that's something that that's bothered me for a long time, because if I want to sing a song Ivri Anochi, it doesn't come out the same way.
No, you're right. By the way, Chony, let me interrupt you. I remember when David Gabey's debut album came out in early 2000s, and Lig Gabey was requested by weddings. There's no bagpipes. There's not half the sections. Everything had to be translated into horns, and it was good, but it wasn't as good. It was like, changing up certain songs in order to play them live. So I definitely hear you. Right. So for you as an artist, to put out something that you can replicate live is very important, I think.
Yes, okay, so even the A-Team, like you say, based on what you're saying, they just did a couple of months ago a Ve'al Hafta. In my opinion, and I hope we can be honest here and it's not considered to be Lashon Hara, it's all out there, it doesn't match the original arrangement, to have a saxophone and a trombone playing the Hafta from Melech Khan. So I do live bands, I do full bands. In Yerushalayim, I'm coming out with something in the next couple of days. I'll send it to you as well. And you'll hear a live band which has a modern sound. So it's not just one-man band that I do. And getting to the album, none of this was created on the keyboard. A lot of people think it is because they're used to seeing me behind the keyboard. But in fact, I have to now jump ahead of myself because now I have to make sure that I can incorporate these into my live gigs. But all of this was created on a software called Ableton Live. Mm-hmm. That was the foundation of this, which gives you 1,000 times more flexibility and power and punch than you can get from any keyboard out there. Mm-hmm. And we have tons of live instrumentation. We have live percussion, we have live brass, we have an accordion in there, lots of guitars. We even have on one of the tracks, or it's maybe 3 or 4 of the tracks, instruments like the oud, the Sephardi instrument, the zurna, the Irish flute.
Wow! But is there melodica though? Is there melodica, Chony?
Yes, it's absolutely melodica.
Okay. I'm happy then. There's a melodica. Fine.
Of course, I have a melodica in there. I play that on the tracks here at the Calypso together with Ace.
For those of you that don't know, melodica is like a mini keyboard that has a blowing component to it.
Yeah, exactly. You blow the keyboard.
Yes.
One of the tracks, which is really a nice EDM track, has got a massive clarinet solo by Michael Winograd, one of the great clarinet players, and it's a really interesting juxtaposition because you have really modern music, but with a real klezmer sound. So it's we have tons of live instrumentation on the album, and I wouldn't have had it any other way. There's something as good as electronic music is, mm-hmm. And as powerful as it is. I think that's the right word. It's got a powerful, full sound. It doesn't compare with the neshama of a guy blowing into an instrument. It just doesn't compare. No. And so, we have tons of live instrumentation on the album.
No, I agree with you. Chony Milecki with us via telephone discussing the release of his brand new album, The Great Farby, in stores now. Which distributor is distributing it, Chony?
Nigun Music is distributing. It's also available on iTunes.
There you go. iTunes, Amazon Music, Google Play, Spotify, wherever Jewish music is sold. So when I debuted a track from your album, I was reading some of the singers, and I mentioned the last single, Mendel Marazov, Alav Shalom, and you were like, Yossi, I don't know if you know, but that's my grandfather. He's not Stam. I thought maybe he was a singer I wasn't familiar with. So how did your grandfather get to be in an album with all these superstars?
So my grandfather's yahrzeit was actually this past Monday.
Oh, wow.
2 days ago. Mm-hmm. And he passed away at the old age of 101 years old.
Wow.
And, Baruch Hashem, he left a big family and a Chassidish family and a very full family. And his passion throughout life was to verbring, and he would sing. And basically, he would teach nigunim to Chassidim everywhere. It was one of his great passions was to sing and to teach and to verbring. Mm-hmm. And when he was about 90 years old, I figured, you know what, I should probably record my grandfather singing some nigunim for the family.
Right.
And there was no way, he was 90 years old, I couldn't bring him into the studio, so I brought the studio to his dining room table. Mm-hmm. I literally bought a microphone, we bought a preamp, a compressor, you name it, we had the whole system there, a mini recording system.
Wow.
And I was very good to be able to record him singing about 15 songs. One of the songs that he sang was his own song that he created. And it's become so popular that Avram Fried recorded it about 10 years ago.
Yeah, I heard about this. Which album was it on? Was it called Mendel's Nigun or something, right?
Yes, it's called Mendel's Nigun, exactly. So I recorded him singing that about even more than 10 years ago. And when it came time to put out the album, I said, of course I have to have my grandfather singing this nigun on his own nigun on my album. Now, it wasn't as easy as you might think, because he sang it on a certain pitch and a certain speed, and
right.
The album.
And you couldn't have him go back and punch in and out and change the tempo or the how high it was. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, when transformation happens, I guess we might have to do it. But it's not even necessary, because with the technologies available today in software like Ableton Live, we're able to manipulate voices like that and make them sound great, and change the tempo and change the key. and that's how I got him into the album, and I was so happy to have him there that I figured he has to be on the poster and on the cover as well.
Right. I actually see, I ran a search here on my computer. Reb Mendel's Niggin was actually also featured on Simchas HaChaim Volume 2. So it's not as obscure as some people might think. So, Chony,
I didn't know that.
How has the results been? What are people giving you? How's the feedback? Are people liking the album? I see very many of the singers that sung on the album supported Jewish music by going out and buying it, but what is the response from the people who have bought it?
Baruch Hashem, the response has been unbelievably, way beyond what I expected. I wasn't sure if it would even get noticed out there. But the response has been unbelievable, and the number one thing that people are telling me is that it's a new sound in Jewish music. And I know that that's the case, and I think you would agree with it. I think that's probably everybody says, hey, this is the new sound of Jewish music. But it really is a new sound in Jewish music. And what I'm really proud of is the people who tell me that they don't listen to Jewish music are listening to this. And the reason is because it's sounding authentic to them. It really has this authentic sound. But it's not, and that's the interesting thing, is it doesn't sound non-Jewish. In fact, I've always challenged people. I say, someone came to me the other day and said, well, why are you doing this non-Jewish style? So I told him, I challenged him, go out there into the non-Jewish music world and find me somebody who did something that sounds like this.
Right.
And if you find it, we can have that conversation. Just because it sounds different doesn't mean it's not Jewish. And again, going back to what I said earlier, the kavanah in making the music and in producing the music is to make a direct and to bring people closer to Hashem. And really, I think that's the best sign of Jewish music.
No, definitely it is.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, Chony Milecki, the album is entitled The Great Farby, is in stores now, available through Niggin Music. It's available for digital download, iTunes, Amazon Music, Google Play. It features the vocals of 8th Day, Barry Weber, Ellie Marcus, Yankee Lemmer, Benny Friedman, Yoni Z, Shuki Sadon, Shmuley Unger, Piamenta, Rogers Park, Mendy Drufi, Nemul HaRosh, and Chony's belated grandfather, Reb Mendel Marazov, ladies and gentlemen. It's available in stores now. Chony, I want to wish you Hatzlacha Rabbah.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
We're going to play you out with the final track of the album, which is one of my favorites. It features both Ellie Marcus and Shmuley Unger. It's called Bring It Home. So, Chony, let's bring it home. What do you say?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great track, Tyra Brother. It's all about, the message of that song really is that it never really ends. It really never ends. The Farbrengen goes on forever. We're going to see each other again. We're going to Farbreng again. I'll be on the Z Report again, and we'll continue the Farbrengen.
You got it, Chony. Take care. Hatzlacha Rabbah. Looking forward to our next Farbrengen.
All the very best.